Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us on Trust TV's Daybreak. Now we'll take a look at the front pages of the newspapers, and of course we'll start with the Daily Trust newspaper. The major story on the front page reads, Naira crisis, FG files objection against Supreme Court decision. And riders here to say Buhari receives Emefiele, Malemi over Apex Court ruling. Experts proffer solution as IMF seeks deadline extension, and 2.6 trillion naira in circulation, not too much. Details of that story can be found on page 4. Towards the bottom of the front page, there FG OK's 117 billion naira for Oloibiri Museum, and you can find that on page 5. At the very bottom there, Senator Mwabushi rearrested by EFCC, jailed over 805 million naira scam. And Islamic school teacher impregnates student, defile others in Kano. Details of that on page 17. Electrical accidents kill 58 persons, injured 46 others in 2022. And of course, the pictorial there is of the Nigerians queuing at ATMs at Wuse Market, trying to get hold of the Naira notes, any which way. Atiku in Yobe pledges to restore peace, open borders, that is on page 10. And Lagos establishes food bank, slashes transport fare by 50%. And details of that can be found on page 28. Tinubu in Lokoja promises industrialization is another story that can be found on page 10 of the Daily Trust newspaper. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
Just for the benefit of students watching on this morning, Oloibiri is the community where Nigeria first struck crude oil, if you're conversant with your history. Moving on straight to Blueprint newspaper this morning, still on the Naira redesign controversy. Kudos knock as Supreme Court halts policy. Tinubu loud governors. El-Rufai says it is an opportunity for review. No, it's an erosion of CBN's independence, Waleke. Ruling would ease tension for peaceful election at day for Laring. IMF wades in, urge FG to extend deadline. Buhari meets Emefiele. You'll find the details of this on page 6. Moving on to the second biggest story on the front page of the Blueprint. 2023 violence, major challenge to credible polls. INEC. Selective intervention by CBN won't work. National Assembly. Immigration intercepts 6,216 voter cards. And APC plotting to use lawmakers to scuttle election, PDP. And Commission appeals Osun Tribunal judgment lists 44 grounds. You'll find also pictures there of the Coalition for Civil Society Organization, Central Coordinating Council, during their protest against the Supreme Court judgment over the February 10th deadline for new Naira notes in Abuja. Two other stories, hope rises as NNPCL begins fuel direct supply to Ipman. And Sterling Bank falls ICPC on hoarding of new Naira notes. FEC OK's 117 billion for Oloibiri Oil Museum. To other stories, contempt why EFCC chair must first go to prison. Olanik Bekun. I will resuscitate Ajakuta Steel, dredge the River Niger. Ajero emerges NLC president. Waba bows out. And stock market rebounds, gain 69 billion. Custom intercept 450 drums of explosive in Ogun. An industrial sector needs competitiveness for global value chain. Revenue Mobilization and Research Development Council, I think. Raw Materials Research Development Council is saying that. These are the major stories on the front page of the Blueprint newspaper.
All right, next we'll take a look at the Nigerian News Direct, and in keeping what we have seen so far, Naira swap. Heavy protests rock CBN headquarters over Supreme Court ruling. And riders here, they say Buhari, Emefiele in closed-door meeting as Supreme Court bars FG from February 10 deadline. Extend February 10 deadline, revisit cashless policy. That is according to governors. Details of that story can be found on page 4. Still with the Naira redesign, scarcity FG orders, fuel scarcity now. Scarcity, FG orders NMDPRA to sanction erring oil marketers. And details of that can be found on page 13. FEC approves 117 billion naira for oil museum in Bayelsa. And Naira scarcity protests. Abiodun visits stray bullet victim at MFC, urges Ogun residents to be calm. Buhari welcomes Ajairo's emergence as NLC leader, charges him to be a partner in progress. And NCC, NSIRT issues advisories to protect Nigerians against threat actors. And towards the top of the front page there, above the nameplate, court dismisses PDP's suit against APC candidates for Lagos Assembly gubernatorial candidate Sanwo-Olu. And contempt, Bawa must go to Kuje prison before any other action, according to Olanipeku. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of Nigerian News Direct newspaper.
Moving on straight to this Nigeria, most of the stories are quite similar to what we have taken. We'll take a few and then make progress. We have a story there on news, this Nigeria. Yobe banks divert 4.3 billion naira new notes, MFB executive alleges. And to other stories there, appeal court affirms Taraba APC senatorial candidate dismisses suit against Labour Party Obi. Of course, we have the Naira notes and the INEC stories there. And of course, the picture from yesterday's FEC, they're showing the president, the vice president, the SGF, chief of staff to the president, and the national security advisor, all there in the council chambers at the Federal Executive Council meeting yesterday. These are the major stories on this Nigeria.
All right, and we're looking at the front page of the Punch newspaper. Most of the stories are actually similar, but we'll take the ones that we haven't taken so far. At the very top of the front page there, 195 naira per litre, impossible, marketers insist. Details can be found on page 30. 900 NNPCL stations to serve INEC during polls, and that is according to Yakubu. I didn't offer to buy kidney, Ekweremadu tells UK court. Details of that can be found on page 39. And towards the bottom of the front page there, INEC appeals Oshun poll judgment, defends Adelicate's victory, and Turkey, Syria earthquake deaths now over 11,200. And that can be found on page 26. And right beside the nameplate there, Wiki lacks popular support to help Tinubu, says Peterside. And details of that can be found on page 7. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of the Punch newspaper. Moving
on to the flagship, the Guardian newspaper this morning. Similar stories, of course, on the front page, but we'll move on to other things. Naira swap, Wiki hails Supreme Court, Rivers to join suit. And we have other stories there. Immigration intercepts 6,216 voters card, identity card, and others from foreigners. Atiku, Huriwa wants Lagos rec remove over alleged partisanship. And Ajero takes over as NLC boss, pledges to reconnect Nigeria with labor movement. The Guardian publishers urges security consciousness, thrust in God. And to other stories there is a strip beneath that, world attention on Nigeria, I hope nothing tampers with election, Obasanjo wants. You want the details of that, you find that on page 6. And we have this gory image on the front page of the Lagos-Abeokuta Expressway at Ile-Epo, Okeado, Lagos, abandoned by the federal government yesterday. That's quite a very busy road connecting to very busy business hub in this country. These are the major stories on the front page of The Guardian.
All right, looking at the front page of the Daily Independent, a few stories that we haven't touched so far. Joe Ajaero emerges new NLC president and vows to confront petroleum product pricing irregularities. And the very top of the front page there, again, Peter Obi expands lead as new poll predicts victory for Labour Party. And the rider here that says Nigeria's future unpredictable if it fails to vote competent president. That is according to Obi. No place for interim national government in 1999 constitution, Atiku tells Tinubu. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of the Daily Independent newspaper.
And to the Daily Sun. Somebody once told me you can do nothing without the sun. Most of the stories, of course, are similar to what other papers are reporting, but we will look at what is different. FG blames oil marketers for high cost of fuel, orders NAMDRA to sanction airing filling stations and give assurances Nigeria Air will fly soon. Amazing. Some 3 months to the end of this administration. I wonder what magic will perform that we had not been able to do in 7 years. NAF warns commanders to remain apolitical, sustain onslaught on terrorists and bandits. You'll find that story on page 30. Atiku asks INEC to remove Lagos rec for alleged partisanship. Rise up, fix insecurity, or rather fix security challenge, Ohaneze charges Southeast governors. And UTME JAM voids registration of 817 candidates. You want to know why? Please look up page 27. And forget Nigeria if you don't vote for Obi Adebanjo, says president of Igbo extraction, worthy cause to fight for. That's on page 26. Oshun, INEC 544 grants of appeal, asks court to set aside tribunal's judgment. And to the other stories that are different there on the front page, I will make Kogi industrial hub of Nigeria. This is coming from the APC candidate, Tinubu. These are the major stories on the front page of the Daily Sun.
All right, now we'll take a look at the Nigerian Tribune, some of the stories that we haven't seen so far. Kogi governor's nephew arraigned for alleged 3 billion naira fraud on page 29. And at the very top of the front page there, we have resolved petrol scarcity, cash crunch issues, says INEC. Nigerians must ensure general elections holds, that is according to President Obasanjo, and FG blames profiteers for hike in petrol price. Details of that on page 21. 400 of our teachers killed by insurgents, that is according to the Borno government. And now these are the major stories on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune.
And to the Nation newspaper, very interesting analysis there on the front page. Aside the other stories that look similar, you have the pro-people and the anti-people, whatever that means. You'll find the details of that on page 4. That's an analysis showing who is for against the redesigned Naira. Amazing developments, or if you like, dramatic developments there amidst the kind of hardship that Nigerians have endured in the last couple of weeks in a bid to find the redesigned Naira notes on the streets of Nigeria. And to other stories, there death toll in Turkey, Syria, earthquakes nears 12,000. Very sad developments. They're coming from a very close trading and development partner of Nigeria. Nigeria Air to begin flying soon, says the federal government. And I seek a nation founded on justice, prosperity for all. Bath. These are the major stories that are different from what we have taken from other papers this morning.
All right, next we'll take what's different from the front page of the Business Day. Apart from the major story that talks about the Naira redesign, religion, tribe seen as holding sway in 2023 polls despite economic pain, and that is on page 4. Sub-Saharan African growth hangs on economic reforms, and that is also on page 4 of the Business Day. And finally, elections will hold irrespective of situation, and that is according to the INEC chairman. Details of that can be found on page 27. Now that's what's different on the front page of the Business Day newspaper this morning.
And at this point, we are joined by the editor-in-chief, Deadline newspaper, Malem Nasrul Lawal. It's a pleasure to have you join us in the studio this morning.
Good to be here.
Yes, when you set out last week, the only mission in front of you was to get fuel and to get the Naira. I hope you were able to meet both targets.
It's actually still a challenge. This morning I was at some of the banks.
Amazing.
Same story.
Amazing.
Honestly,
it's unfortunate. We have covered quite a number of papers this morning for you. The idea is to give you a sense of what is happening across the country. And it appears from each of the newspapers that the issue of the Naira yesterday was predominantly the biggest issue in the Nigerian polity. And people reported it from different perspectives. We woke up around 9 a.m. thereabouts to the Supreme Court judgment, and thereafter we saw protests for and against. And then we move on to all kinds of interpretation. We saw some legal opinion from the Central Bank of Nigeria. And then finally, as the Daily Trust is reporting this morning, that the federal government will file an objection against the Supreme Court's decision. Coming in fact, they had indeed filed an objection as at last night. And the president then, somewhere in between, had to see Malemi and the CBN governor ahead of a very crucial Council of State meeting tomorrow. What do you make of all the unfolding drama as far as this Naira crisis is concerned?
It's good that it's coming, is it a day? Or is it on the very day that the 7 days requested by the president will be lapsing, or is it tomorrow? I don't know. But what I expected the government to do is actually to use the decision by the Supreme Court so that they go back to the drawing board and see where they need to make amends and maybe things like that. But you can see the fact that the government was actually quick to raise an objection to this. It shows you that probably what the Supreme Court did, ran contrary to what the president probably was planning to do by the end of the 7 days he requested for. But all said and done, without easing the hardship, I don't see the decision by the Supreme Court alone, or the objection by the federal government, or what the CBN is saying, or the protests that Nigerians are embarking upon, and related issues. I don't see how that will ease the hardship, because right now what we are talking about is to be able to, recover, get back our lives. Because like I was telling you earlier, I went to at least 2 banks this morning, and what they are even doing right now is to even take numbers. They are not allowing you into the premises. What they are doing is for you to pen down your name, so that when it is your turn, they call you. And honestly, by the time I was there, around 6 or so, I was told that I will be the 78 or so. I said, no, I don't think it's necessary.
It reminds me of the military junta, where you had to take numbers to buy kerosene from a filling station. Like the days of austerity, you take numbers to be given milk and sugar. But there's like you said something that's instructive, the body language of the president, based on the moves that we have seen. First, there was a legal opinion that suggested that if the state had joined the CBN in the suit, then the Supreme Court would have lacked the jurisdiction to even hear that suit.
Yeah.
Because on the matters of the currency, the only institution that can determine what is legal tender or not, as vested by the Constitution, is the central bank. They punted that lacuna. And then I spoke to some lawyers while we were trying to develop this, and they were also of the opinion that the Supreme Court, the prayers sought by the states were not enough. You said the 2 of them should continue to exist. Whatever we have in circulation right now is not enough, which was a vital point that the Supreme Court did not compel the CBN to release what it had already mopped up, which is the basis for this scarcity
and shortage.
So it comes back to the second thing you have said, that it doesn't change anything on the ground as it is. This will just be a legal tussle that they will continue to use to buy time while they continue to move towards whatever strategy it is. Yeah. Those were the opinions I got yesterday. Do you agree with these perspectives?
Well, legal opinions sometimes differ. I also saw some lawyers, some of them actually senior advocates of Nigeria, saying the president actually caused the problem, or the CBN rather, caused all the problem, because in as much as they have the right, to do all the things that they are doing at the moment, but they always run to the president to say that the president has approved this, the president is giving us the go ahead. So using this as an excuse, the states can take the president to court, and that's exactly what happened. So like we insist, without availability of this money, honestly, we'll continue moving in a cycle, because as it is, we are buying naira with naira. And why is that the case? Because we have succeeded in creating scarcity. And once there is scarcity, people will latch on it, be able to see what they will be able to get. And if you are like those who succeed in getting some of this maybe new currency over the counter, what do the people do? You get your 10,000 naira, and then somebody is waiting for you somewhere with 11,000 naira or even more. You sell it and then go back to the queue, because you have somehow left the things that you used to do, maybe your small businesses and what have you. All the time you were at the banks trying to get money, 1 or 2 naira notes. So you take that to be your own new business, get it from the bank and then sell it outside, because there is the need for it and the scarcity remains. So as long as the scarcity is still there, honestly, I don't see this, and like you said, without the CBN releasing the amount that they have succeeded in moping, honestly, I don't see us making any headway. Because like you can see, India tried this in 2017, so 2016 or 2017. So Nigeria is not the first. And at that time, India insisted that they wanted to do away with black money in the economy. And to this moment, they didn't succeed. Because as you are planning, the criminals, all
changing strategies.
They are also changing strategies. And before you know it, these banks are owned by some people that are actually politically exposed. So what do? As a manager, yes, the CBN is telling me to do this, but then I report to my employers. And I wouldn't want to be out of job the next day. So sometimes it's very difficult to push this. So I expect the government, all the stakeholders, to try and see that we now have some availability of the money in the market, so that at least we can get some parts of our lives back.
All right. Well, for a moment there, one would actually forget that we are in political season, and the elections are just around the corner, because it's all about the narrow redesign, the scarcity, and all that. But one thing that has come up, I think the politicians trying to remain in the limelight when it comes to this narrow redesign thing, is certain sections or certain people making some allegations or bringing up some accusations that these protests that are actually happening are plans to scuttle the upcoming election, so that there will be room for an interim national government or something of a sort, a convoluted sort of conspiracy theory. Where do you stand on that?
Well, we are somehow responsible for it. Like you see, politicians will be politicians. Even if you go to a religious event, if you give the chance to politicians, they will try to introduce politics into it. I remember, one of the parties accusing, their rivals of supporting the policy because they are anti-people. And then some are saying, no, you are supporting it because you want to do vote buying. So you can see we are missing out on the importance of the policy itself, because right now I am yet to see one person, that is maybe saying, that the policy is not good entirely. No, people are saying, no, it's a good thing. We should be able to improve on our digital spending and what have you. But then the way we are going about it is the problem. And once you have a problem, like I said, politicians being politicians, they will latch on it and, make it, we are just 16 days away, for God's sake, to the election. And the issues are no longer being discussed. All we are now talking about is this party supports this party is against this. And you allow all the sorts of conspiracies to thrive, because you have allowed the problem to fester.
Interesting. I recall the very first public address of President Trump when he won that election, and the pressmen and the general public were waiting for so long before he came out, because I'm sure he was taking briefing back end on what to say and what not to say, what to touch and what. And when he came out for a while, he said complicated business. State matters, complicated business. And when I remember those words, I just think of this country. Everything at this point is just basically complicated. We are discussing the scarcity of the naira amidst enduring fuel crisis. Well, we see the fuel in some part of Abuja. Maybe they are more afraid of the DSS in Abuja than they are of the DSS or in the state. Or maybe the DSS are overwhelmed with leaving other things they are supposed to do, pursuing intelligence, to now forcing filling stations to dispense what they have at a control price. We saw kind of confusion yesterday and the day before about Ipman withdrawing services, and then somewhere in between coming back to also withdraw the notice to withdraw service and all of that. And Ibrahim was saying this morning that we have an incredible shock absorber. But should that be what we should be celebrating? Because at some point we will have to break.
Yeah.
Something has to
Yeah.
give.
Yeah.
Does the Nigerian state understand that we get to a point where we can no longer continue to move back? Where we can no longer break the fence and continue to, that we will bounce back someday? Are they ever bothered?
Well, from happenings on the ground, it doesn't seem as if they worry about all the things that are happening. And even the Abuja that you mentioned, you know, we keep going in circles because today you see the fuel and then tomorrow the queues are back. So it's not as if we have succeeded in doing away with the scarcity in Abuja. So if Abuja is experiencing this, like for instance in Kaduna, I don't remember the last time we had, you know, we even had some sort of relief, you know. It's either you go to the bypass and buy your fuel at exorbitant. And what keeps bothering me is the fact that all these filling stations that you see, you know, they come back to life once they are scarcity. You know, once the fuel is available, they close shop, and they are no longer
filling stations that are not active unless there's fuel scarcity.
And there are some marketers, you know, that from what I heard, you know, they go about, you know, looking for all these owners of small filling stations, you know, just give me access to your tank so that I can keep some fuel there. And they have been doing that. So sometimes, no matter the amount you succeed in pushing,
They mop it.
they mop it. And once you have the place to keep it, you wait for the time that the price will rise, and then you keep selling at exorbitant the price. So it doesn't seem as if the government is worried, you know, because if they are, at least we should have seen some level of intervention, you know, to either lessen the problem, if not do away with it altogether.
Well, some states are actually doing it. I mean, like we've gotten reports that Lagos State government has established a food bank, and of course have slashed transport fares by 50%. I mean, well, they I think in their own way they feel they're trying to ameliorate those sufferings. But let's move slightly away from that a little bit. One story that seems to have made the rounds, and Sunday was actually quick to point out the significance of what it was, because a lot of people will hear Oloibiri and say, what actually is that? A lot of our viewers will actually think about that. But the federal government has okayed 117 billion for a museum. Is this the right time?
Well, even if it is not the right time, I think it's a right decision. You know, like Nigerians will say, it's a step in the right direction, because, you know, we seem not to appreciate, you know, the importance of museums in Nigeria. You know, when in so many other countries, you know, they are being seen as money and spinners. You know, you get lots of money because of
historical relevance.
Historical relevance. Like I remember in Bangladesh, for instance, the father of the nation, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. You know, if you go to his house, you know, he was assassinated, and they tried to leave most of the things, you know, as they were when he was actually assassinated. So because of that, so many people are now spending money to be able to go and see, you know, how it looks. And Nigeria, whether we like it or not, we are still a mono economy, because all the money that we keep getting is still coming from oil. And this is the first place, you know, where we were able to get, you know, oil, you know, and if you look at what oil was able to do for the nation, honestly, I think it's a very good decision that the government is trying to preserve some of these things, so that because it's actually part of our
But the
heritage.
ones we already have, are we actually utilizing them? Because you're talking about it's a means for us to actually get revenue and boost tourism and all that. The ones we have, because you just talked about Bangladesh keeping things in. I remember Ariwa House.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be something like that for the Sadona, and I don't think it's being used the way it's supposed to.
No. Honestly, if we are to treat it the same way we are treating the ones that are existing, honestly, then you will say it's a misplaced priority, because unless we, try to change the story so that we don't end up with what obtains in so many other museums, because what do they even do with them? You see some maybe Kannywood, film going there to do some of their movies because of the aesthetics and the surroundings, But apart from that,
and because nobody hardly goes there.
Yeah, and apart from that, they don't do anything with them. And there was a time I read a report, people actually stealing some of the artifacts, because we are not even paying attention. And probably they were not being paid salary. And like Nigerians will tell you, where you they work, there you they shop. So if you are working there and then they are not able to take care of your basic needs, actually if you remain in that job, believe me, you will be taking some things out of it, and which is very bad. So if we are serious, then this is good. But if we are to treat it the same way we have been treating the ones we have, then honestly, it's better for us to just take the money and channel it into something more productive, since we have so many other areas where we can do with this amount.
Unfortunate. I will share a very short story before we move on. I was at a PTA meeting of my ward, and I was challenging the management to say, why are you always asking us to pay money to take children to the airport? They see these planes every day. They see them on cartoons, but you never take them to museums, and there are quite a number. When I was in Bauchi, I was at the Yaradua Monument, similar to what you are saying in Bangladesh. The caps he wore, his teacup, and you could see the ordinariness of a very simplified person and yet very complicated person, a prime minister yet living very simple. And the message struck several years after the incidents. I went to the first story building in Badagry one of those times I was in Lagos. You could tell how we got to where we were and all of those. I wonder why schools would ignore those kind of places where you have curators to take them through times and history, and just take people to the airport and watch metal beds
at one point, history was scrubbed from the curriculum.
You can
entirely. So it was just recently brought back. So you can imagine the value we place on history.
I hope we get to a point where even the government can make it mandatory that a part of the curriculum, that these children at whatever level are taken to these places so that they have a rich knowledge of where we are coming from. Moving on to other story, the federal government seems to still be very high on promises. It is telling us that come what may, Nigerian Air will fly. I want to think that if we're thinking of flying in 90 days, we should have been seeing the birds by now. We should be understanding certain things. We don't yet even have an idea of who is going to operate Nigeria, under what structure, what fundings, and all of that. We don't see anything in the budget to suggest that there is a monumental provision for that. The so-called winner of it is in battle with Nigeria. Help us make sense of the minister's statements. Is this just a chip of the old lies, or there's actually something we are not seeing?
Actually, if you ask me, I will tell you that the Nigerian Air, or what do they even call it, is actually flying, on social media. And then
they have a logo. The logo was actually
there is a logo which is flying around on social media. But in reality, I don't see Nigeria being able to establish a serious airline in the remaining 90 days. And it's nothing for you to come out and say, okay, I wanted to do this, but then circumstances, did not allow Nigeria to be able to achieve that. But because some monies went into the design of the logo and other things, probably they don't want to come to to explain what happened to all the monies that they have collected, when in reality we ended up with no airline. So rather than insist on flying, honestly, I would expect the minister to, if he knows that this thing is not possible, there is nothing wrong in telling Nigerians the truth. But for you to keep insisting that it will fly, will fly, when even the ones that we have, we keep having one or two problems with them. Honestly, it's not the best.
Okay, quickly as we round up, before Ibrahim come up, say staying with Nigeria, Should the government really be worried about a legacy that would not be preserved? My question really is in line with what you have said, because I've gone through the manifesto of the 4 leading candidates. And I mean, we don't need an oracle to tell us that the next president will come from those front runners. And each of the manifesto, they've all promised to privatize the aviation agency. So if you are thinking of nationalizing something and your successors are thinking of privatization, what is the best thing for you? Is it to set up and then eventually we'll be thinking of selling, or to just stay away from it?
Well, maybe what they are trying to do is to see how they can even be the ones in charge, like what happened in the power sector. You know, they ended up selling it to what I wouldn't call them cronies, you know, but people that are close to them. So right now that we are talking about trying to claim back the power sector, you know, they are the same people that we keep meeting, when in reality they failed to change the story while they were in charge. So it's the same thing that I see happening with the Nigerian Air. Like you said, why should you be pushing for something that none of the leading candidates is even thinking along the same line with you? And this thing should be about Nigerians. It shouldn't be just about you. Of course, we all want to have some legacies to say that, okay, I was the one who did this. But if the circumstances, will not allow you to do that, it's better you allow things to happen. Of course, you must have achieved 1 or 2 things. So it's not everything that you will set out to achieve and that you will be able to do. So do the ones that you can and allow others to come and see if it is something that they think they will do, and then they bear it.
Interesting perspective there, and you could not have gotten it better from anybody other than what Madam Nasrullah, I was tempted to say Nasir El-Rufai, has been on everybody's tongue in the last couple of days. Thank you very much for always showing up. I feel your pain. And indeed, we feel your pain.
We're all in this together.
Yes, as we promised last week, hopefully when he returns, because we are always here, the situation will be better. His pocket will be better oiled. Hopefully. His tanks will be filled with some petroleum motor spirit. Thank you very much for making it to the studio.
Thank you.
And we look forward to having you again back soon.
Thank you.
This is where we draw the curtains on the newspaper review this morning. We'll take a short break. We'll see you at the top of the hour. Please stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that a person look like the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that